Well, hello and welcome to another episode of The Mark Medley Show. Thank you. It is so good to be with you again. And the title of our episode today is, Can you imagine if the money that was spent on equipment and material to kill people, if that same amount, not $1 more, if that same amount was spent to build people up, to love people? I mean, think about that for a minute. That's something to reflect on. Think about the money that is spent on tools and weapons and machinery to kill. That's what the weapons are designed for. That's what the materials are designed for. They are designed to kill and destroy. Think about that for a minute. Now, I have been in the military. I served in the military for 9 years. I was a jet engine mechanic. So even some of this equipment that I'm talking about is money that was spent on. They were spent on the planes and the aircraft carriers and the guns and the nuclear weapons and everything. And I'm not saying countries cannot and should not and ought not be ready to defend themselves. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying and asking us to reflect on is, think about it for a second. Just look at it from a different perspective. The dollars that is spent to kill, what if those dollars were spent for life, were spent to save lives, to build folks up, to show love, to spread encouragement, opposed to killing? So I kind of did a little bit of research, a real quick and dirty research. In 2022, the United States spent $766 billion in defense. In 2023, the U.S. spent $746 billion in defense. Now, this is on a per annum. This is annually, because the stat that I just gave you was for 1 year, $766 billion in 2022. $746 billion in 2023. Can you imagine if we spent $766 billion in building people up? Can you imagine if we spent $746 billion on loving people? Can you imagine if we spent $766 billion on life and health? And don't get me wrong, I am not confusing what's spent on health care in this country. If I look that stat up, I'm sure the number is large as well. But think in terms of, if in addition to whatever we're already spending on it, we had another $746 billion. Or another 100 or 766 billion. I mean, really seriously, I thought about this the other day as I was actually on my radio show yesterday morning, because I always differentiate between this show, the podcast, the Mark Medley Show, which is a podcast, and my radio show, The Reading Circle with Mark Medley. Many people get them confused because I guess now in 2024, a radio show and podcast is used interchangeably, but I always like to differentiate only because my podcast I can record here at home in my home studio. My radio show is actually in a radio studio. Yes, my friends, radio studios still do exist. So I always differentiate between my radio show and my podcast. So my radio show broadcasts live on Saturday mornings from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. on gobrave.org. So today is Sunday as I'm recording this podcast. Yesterday morning, Saturday morning, during my radio show, it occurred to me as I was making commentary, the money that is spent to destroy life, to destroy property, to destroy land, and ultimately, as I said, to take life. Think about that for a minute. 746 billion. I did not say million. I said billion. $746 billion was spent in 2023 on defense. I don't know what the breakout of that is in terms of weaponry, but I'm sure it is huge. And it just constantly goes over in my mind, especially as you brief the news and you look through the news of so much killing and hatred that is going on. And yet the money that is spent for us to be able to do just that, to kill, to take someone else's life. In those war-torn countries, a lot of the civilians have nothing to do with the war per se. However, their homes are being destroyed. Their lives are being disrupted. Their families are being torn apart. And all I'm saying is, could you imagine if we did just the opposite? If all of this money and energy and effort was spent on putting people together, on building families, on building housing, on building land. If that same amount of money, if these same billions of dollars were spent on building people up, what kind of world might we have? What kind of world might we have if that same money, and not $1 more, was spent on loving people to life instead of killing them, instead of bombing them, instead of shooting them, instead of however we take the lives? Because at the end of the day, a life is a life is a life. I served in the military, so I am not anti-military. My time in the Air Force, I absolutely loved it. Had I been in a conflict, I would have followed orders, whatever my commanders said to do. But the point I'm making here is not anti-American, is not anti-military, is not anti-defense. The only point I'm making is, seems to me we would have a lot better world if we focused more on building people up, if we focused more on encouragement, if we focused more on helping, if we focused more, or at least just as much. And again, I did not pull the stats for what we do from a humanitarian standpoint or from a healthcare standpoint. I'm just saying, again, my point of this particular episode is just think, I just get into my imagination of how much of a better world we would be. All of that, to be honest with you, takes heart change and attitude change. It takes change in perspective. I posted something I saw on social media today that was interesting. It said, maybe this world is another planet's hell. That struck me as very interesting. It said, maybe this world is another planet's hell. Think about that for a minute. Because see, one of the things I love to do in terms of my podcast as well as my radio show is to cause folks to think. Now, you may not agree with me, and to be honest with you, I don't care if you agree with me or not. I am not saying what I am saying for agreement. I am not saying what I am saying to be popular. I'm saying what I am saying, that whoever the listener is, regardless of what platform you are listening on, that as you listen to it, that it causes you to think. Again, you may not agree. You may think I'm talking just as far off as they come. But at the same time, if it causes you to think, then my platforms has done its job. So this is going to be a short one today. Normally, my podcasts or around 17, 18, 19, 20 minutes. And the last one that I put out was 3 hours. The special episode on the civil rights movement was 3 hours. But this was going to be a short one, 10, 11 minutes, maybe 12 minutes. But I just want you to think. $746 billion spent on defense in 2023, $766 billion in 2022. And my guess is we're probably going to spend at least that or get close to that in 2024. So give that some thought. As I said, you can catch me live each Saturday morning from 6 to 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Time. If you log on to gobrave.org, GOBRAVE.org, you can catch the show from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. If you go to my website, marcamedley.com, MarcAmedley.com, that is the portal to all of my social media sites. That lets you know all of the various endeavors and initiatives that I have going, my music work. Matter of fact, the music that's playing in the background right now is written and produced by me. My social media sites, whether it be Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, what have you, that's all there, as well as information about the show. So go to that. That is the portal, marcamedley.com, MarcAmedley.com. And I appreciate you. I thank you so much for listening. Always be on the lookout for episodes of The Mark Medley Show, as well as The Reading Circle with your host, Mark Medley.